Buenos días a todos. Good morning. I am Dr. Patricia Campos Medina, and I serve as the Executive Director of the Worker Institute. The Worker Institute is the labor research and education arm of the ILR School at Cornell University. We are committed to work in collaboration with unions, our community partners, policy advocates, to advance policy solutions to the problems we are living right now in our economy and our society. We are delighted to partner with the CUNY School of Labor and Urban Studies to bring all of you together, and the group that came yesterday, and they will come back later because it's just delayed because of the trains, to discuss, yes, to discuss what labor's role in this crisis of democracy that we are facing right now, and what is our role as educators, as advocates, as union leaders in creating solutions so that we can give hope and a vision of how we're going to move forward together. I first want to thank my colleague, Jeff Karbowski, who was part of the planning committee for putting this conference together, and to everyone at CUNY and Stephanie Luz for always bringing us together to work on keep policies forward. I wanted to start this morning reminding us all of something that Becky Pringle, our keynote speaker, told us yesterday. And wasn't she amazing? Like, her remarks were powerful because we're focused on what the union is doing, but then it called us to do more and to envision a bigger vision for where we're going. Something that stuck with me is that she said that we owe this moment in this fight, we owe it to our children to show up, to fight back. And that it's not just about going back to before Donald Trump, but it's about having a vision of America that is worthy of our children's future. That was powerful. So today, as we go through the day, I want us to focus on what that common vision is that we want to build together for our children's future and for America. The election of Donald Trump, President Trump, revealed a massive divide on the American society, on the belief that democracy as a form of government can solve people's needs. But that divide didn't start with Donald Trump. We, and all of you who have worked with workers and unions, knew that workers were already living in the verge of economic disaster, and that they were demanding solutions to their economic struggles. But for the last 30 years, the billionaire class took hold of our government and slowly deteriorated the ability of Americans to achieve their American dream. They told us, the billionaire class, that trickle-down economics was good for Americans because if they made more money, we would all make more money. They told the American workers that all of us have the opportunity to get rich in this country, and that therefore being poor was an individual choice, an individual failure. And they separated us, and they made us believe that I only have to worry about myself, not my neighbor. So our government, both Democrat and Republican, gave them tax breaks, moved our jobs away to poor contract and exploited workers overseas, simultaneously closed the border to immigrants, made it more difficult for anyone to become a citizen. They defunded our schools, they bailed our banks, they regulated the home mortgages, increased the student loan interest, and during all this time, the last 30 years, economic inequality grew worse and worse, making the American citizens doubt their ability to get redress for their economic concerns through our democratic system. But the labor movement was fighting back, some very aggressively, some thinking that if we made accommodations with the system that we will get something back, that we will get some jobs, some collective bargaining agreements. So perhaps we weren't bold enough in demanding more control over our billionaire class. I am excited every time I see a union strike, when the UAW fights back and demands new jobs and new contracts. I am excited when I see Amazon workers, young people who were promised better jobs, now fighting the biggest corporate raider in the world. I get excited about that. But I also get worried that we don't have the capacity to do labor strikes nationally. And that should be a vision. I am excited when I see the president of the Painters Union, Jimmy Williams, and recently the AFL-CIO, Liz Schuler, called for the return of our union member who was sent, Kilmar, who was sent to El Salvador, to a prison camp. The labor movement standing for prisoners to be returned back. I am excited about that. But the question that lives in my mind is that, are we doing enough? That's the question. Are we doing enough to fight for all those people that will lose their Medicare, their Medicaid? Are we doing enough to defend or transform our labor relations system? And that's when that question nags me, and it should nag all of us. And that's when I think about my grandfather, Jose Maria Campos, Papita Chema, in El Salvador. He was a small plot farmer in the mountains of El Salvador. He lived most of his adult life, and I lived most of my childhood under a military authoritarian regime, a government that would kill you if you spoke about getting a better pay for your crop, a government that wouldn't tolerate dissent and put you in jail for having a different opinion, a government that banned books and banned the ability to listen to radio programs or to music, whatever you wanted, a government that made you afraid of your neighbor. As a little girl, I remember my grandfather listening in the dark, in the morning, to the radio, to the sermons of Monsignor Romero. I remember him going to meetings that nobody knew where they were. And he told us that we needed to do what we need to join with others to defend the dignity of people in our towns. He joined what then was called the Civil and Popular Front, a civilian movement to raise the voices of those who were afraid to speak up. I remember listening to the sermons of Monsignor Romero as a girl. And in the speeches, he used to tell everyone that we all had to make a choice. Whether you were in the army, you were a farmer, you were a homemaid, you had to make a choice to be on the side of the oppressor or to be on the side of those fighting oppression. And he reminded us that every society, at every crisis, and that crisis comes every 30 years, every society goes through a moment of societal crisis that brings moments of kairos in its citizens. Kairos is that key personal moment when you have to make a choice to move beyond your personal convenience and your personal safety and fight to demand community transformation. My grandfather, Jose Maria, Papita Chema, took that call from Monsignor Romero, and he joined the National Citizen Front. He never took arms. He never did, but he fought. And that moment of choice cost him his children's life, and then his displacement, and the migration of his children to the United States. We got me to being in this room today. I ask myself every day, why would I choose at this moment in time? In the comfort of my safety, I have a good job, I have a family that is safe, I have 2 children in school, in the suburbs. What would I choose? Would I be like my grandfather? Would I choose myself in the middle of the fight? Today in this conference, we are talking about organizing for a communal fight. But that communal fight begins with a personal choice. Dr. Reverend William Barber from the People's Campaign tells us just last week when he got arrested that it's our responsibility at this moment of insecurity with the threat of white nationalism and hate and racism on our face, that this is our moment of kairos. This is the moment, he says, that we must embolden our vision for justice. We must register our discontent with injustice, and we must rise up again to meet this moment with the clarion and the clarity of justice behind our back. So today, I was engaged in the workshops and the discussions. I want to argue that we must move beyond thinking, that we must just build a movement to win the next election, the next campaign. We must not just think about building a movement so that Democrats get elected, and that hopefully they can transform the rules so that they can make rules for working people. We must move beyond thinking that the political class will be a savior. We need to think that citizens and workers and unions will save us from this moment of crisis. We must commit to rebuild a new political order, driven by the interests of people over the interests of political parties. We must recommit to fight for a political system that puts people's interests first. We need to demand a social contract. And we need to be the ones driving from the bottom up, from the workers' voices, from the union movement, and demand our political leaders to stand up for changing our economic policy. We must demand a new social contract, one that includes the rights of workers to join a union and the right to live with dignity. We must demand a economic system, a political system that stops giving billionaires a massive tax cut and increase the federal minimum wage, I would say, to $25 an hour, not anymore 15. This is 50, yes. I will argue that this new social contract that we must fight to build, and it starts with the labor movement, it starts with us as labor educators, as advocates, this is our moment of kairos. And at every stage of the fight forward, as educators, we are under attack in higher education. Some of us are fearful of speaking up and going against our administration because the administration is under attack by the government, telling that if you speak for one group, you will lose your funding. If you speak up as a professor, as an administrator, you might not have a job, so you cannot help others. That's a real threat. And at this moment, other people have taken up this call in the past. Our African-American community in the civil rights movement took the fight to fight for civil rights. So we, all of us, must take that fight again. So at this stage going forward, when we engage for the rest of the day, I want us to think, what is my role in this moment? What is the choice that I have to make, whether it is at my university, whether it is at my job, whether it is in my community? What am I willing to sacrifice to protect my fellow men? Immigrant, citizen, non-citizen, black, white. What am I willing to sacrifice my convenience? That's the challenge of our times, because societal change happens when people make the right choice. And that right choice leads to communal fights and to communal change. This conference is about understanding what our communal choices are, what is our communal fight, and then what choice we will make to drive that fight forward. So thank you for coming here. Thank you for spending this today with us. This is the community that we hope to multiply. And out of here, when you make the choice to join the fight, our job is to go recruit 20 other people to join that fight with us, and we will build a civil front, a civilian movement to take back our democracy. Thank you, and we have workshops to go do.